Alright, so welcome to another episode of the Uncharitable Book Club. We haven't done one of these in a while, I think, because we were disheartened by how we weren't liking anything. Hi. You guys don't see enough of my rats. That's my opinion. Anyway, we're doing Bag of Bones this episode, and we're kind of switching up how we're doing it to where now, when whoever reads it first, they do, or whoever picks it, I guess, they do clips like this, and then when the other one is reading it, when they have something to say, they're going to come in and we're going to have like a little mini discussion. So it's going to be vlog style, but it's still like a review, if that makes sense. So for this video, we're doing Bag of Bones by Stephen King. I just started the audio. He reads it, and Neil Gaiman, when he reads his stuff, it's going to be the best read that it can be. I don't know about Stephen King. I feel weird about it, to be honest. But my history first of all, Bag of Bones is about a writer whose wife dies, and he goes on a retreat trying to fix his writer block from after she dies. And lots of drama ensues. This vlog is going to be filled with spoilers. Spoiling the hell out of it. Like, leave now. But, so my history of Bag of Bones, in case you don't know, the whole idea behind this channel is that I wanted to reread Stephen King books to see if I still liked any, because I used to read them a ton when I was a teenager, and I kind of miss feeling like, part of that community, I guess. So it has not been successful so far, but my history with Bag of Bones is the first time I read it, I was under 13. We would drive to my grandmother's house, which is 7 hours away from where we lived at the time, and my parents would play audiobooks, and those were my first introductions to Stephen King, other than his movies. So we would listen to The Mist. This one time we listened to The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon and Bag of Bones. So I think did we also listen to Dreamcatcher? I don't like Dreamcatcher. That one's not gonna be fun. But Bag of Bones, the first time I heard it when I was just a child, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. And that's probably just because, I was just not then getting introduced to books. The second time I read it, I thought it was solidly okay. So I'm interested to see how I feel about it this time. So far, already it's just like his wife died to kick off his story, so. So I'm on part 2 of 20. I have a few thoughts, starting with, so he keeps repeating the first line of Rebecca over and over and over again. Last night I dreamt of Manderley, just over and over again, and it's starting to get on my nerves a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. But other than that, I'm actually enjoying it pretty well. It's compelling, it's very personal and emotional. Kind of slow, but all of his books are kind of slow, so that doesn't really bother me. However, I didn't remember much about this book, not gonna lie. But a little bit of it's coming back to me, and I think it's gonna get very, very, racist soon. Hi, baby. Hi. It's been 10 minutes since my last update. I forgot a couple of things, and a couple of things happened. So let's start with, you good? Let's start with the fact that this audiobook has music that plays in between everything. I don't like that. I've never liked that. It's very distracting. But also, almost comically, after I said things are about to get racist, his editor calls him to make him a book deal. He's just like, you should always start as high as possible and work your way down. So he offered like $9 million for 3 books or something, and obviously they're gonna negotiate down. But the main character has a thought, like, somewhere along the lines of calling him an Ethiopian rugs salesman. Did we need that line? Did it have to be there? I feel like you could have not had it. Just saying. So I'm on part 3 of 20 in Bag of Bones. And so far I'm just getting like Lacey's story flashbacks. It's so similar because they're both about the grief of losing a spouse, and like so similar and yet so far apart, because at least what's his name, Paul? This doesn't bode well that I can't remember his name right now, but he at least is a fully realized person, whereas Lacey was not. So shockingly, the woman's the one who's underdeveloped. But yeah, they're just, again, not acting like people. They never act like people in Stephen King books. There's a part where she goes down on him. He's thinking of his dead wife, and like in this recollection, she goes down on him, and basically the way it's described just evokes images of hungry hippos. And he's like mad at her for dying, which is fine, that's not an issue, but he wasn't mad at her until he saw a picture that made him horny, and then that's when he gets mad at her. So beautiful, wonderful, not at all problematic. The main character just picked up a literal child. She's like 4 years old, and he thought that she was so cute and sweet that she'd probably be pregnant by 12. Stephen King and kids, man. It always gets gross. I am like 2 minutes in to Bag of Bones today, and stuff has happened. So basically, Mike, his name's Mike. Mike goes to a lake house that he and his wife used to go to every summer. They didn't the summer she died for reasons. He hasn't been there in 4 years, blah, 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 blah. So he goes to a lake house. This is the main setting of the story. And on his first day back in town, he's going into town to buy, I think, groceries or something. And he sees a little girl walking down the middle of the street along the white line because she thinks it's a crosswalk. That's what her mother told her. And he stops the car, jumps out, and grabs her so she doesn't get killed by a car. And then her mom comes speeding down the highway. She wants to go to the beach, the little girl does, so she's just gonna go on her own because her mom said no. So after he grabs her, her mom comes speeding down the road in their car. He manages to flag her down, and she looks young and like she doesn't have money. Come on, Mom Bright. Come on, baby. There we go. That's a good baby. So she looks young and not very rich. So he just automatically assumes, and he's just like, I know it's bad, as if pointing it out means that it's okay, that what he's done. He just assumes she's trailer trash. He calls her a slut and stupid because he just assumes she's going to yell at her child because she looks like trailer trash. Like, Cappy's gonna have a field day with this book already. We're really rolling with it now. Hi, baby. Hi, these days. We're really rolling with it now because he's talking about the 3-year-old, and he's decided that she's gonna, by the time she's 20, have 3 kids, and he used the R slur to describe one of them. He said the other 2 were gonna have ringworm just because they live in a trailer. Just because they live in a trailer. I am on part like 3 or 4 of 20. The story hasn't even started. Look at that beautiful baby girl. Look at her. I am 6 parts in of 20 in Bag of Bones. And this freaking guy, I know how this ends, but I wish Mike would die. He's talking about, so this guy comes up and he's like, he's the kind of man who certain women would find attractive, the kind of women who, you know, hide bruises and all this other domestic violence. He alludes to domestic violence things, and then he says, on some level, they think they deserve it, and that's why they just don't do anything. So you're blaming victims of domestic violence for the domestic violence because they just aren't confident enough in themselves to get away. How dare you? Oh my god. It's not nuanced at all. Like, this book came out in the 90s. So I'm aware of that. It doesn't mean I can't discuss the things in here. And Jesus Christ, what were you thinking? Genuinely, even in the 90s, that seems like a pretty old-fashioned viewpoint. I almost feel bad for making Cappy read this, but to be fair, I'm not actually making her read it. She's choosing to. I mean, oh, no. Okay. I keep forgetting to mention that, like, this is spoiler filled. I can call her love interest. The love interest of this book is 20 and Mike is 40. So, great. And, like, I don't know, the way he describes young women or children is always disgusting. So I'll try to pipe in with a couple of more of those descriptions as I go. But he's talking about the guy who just subpoenaed him, or served him, I don't know, gave him a subpoena. And he says, and he calls alcohol. I don't even know if I can say it, honestly. It's, you guys know the racist thing people call it when they're talking about Native Americans, alcohol? Yeah, he calls it that. I don't know if I can say it. I'll have to double check, but he calls it that. And it's just like, why? We're just going in now. Still 6 parts in. The classism in this book is off the wall. It's basically, if you're upper class, you're a monster, which, I'm not gonna argue that one. What are you doing? And if you're lower class, you're a dirty, dumb abuser. Beautiful, right? Beautiful. And Mike is upper middle class, I believe is what it's hinted at, or lower upper class, that kind of thing. But he's fine. He's a good guy. Because he doesn't have too much money, he has just the right amount of money. And therefore, he's not a dirty, dumb abuser or monster. He's a good man. Beautiful. It's like he didn't even see what he was doing. Still reading Backbones, as y'all know. That's why you're here. I really don't like this one. So basically, Mike, he is helping Maddie with her custody case. So Maddie is the love interest, the mother of the little girl he found walking along the side of the road. And her father-in-law is this rich man who is he's a bully and he's a psychopath. Of course, they're not going to say that. And he's just going to be crazy and mentally ill, and they're never going to explain anything like that. But he's helping her out because, Mike's a good guy with money. He does what's right with his money. The father-in-law, he does bad things, but Mike does good things. I really don't like Mike. It's like his classism is terrible, and he always points out when he's wrong, but it's only when he's wrong. Like, he makes these assumptions, and when he's wrong, it's like, oh, I should have made those assumptions. But if he was right, he'd be like, oh yeah, what a stereotypical white trash curse word. And I don't like him. But anyway, we're also, the slurs in this are getting kind of ridiculous most of the time. In fact, I think every single time he said a slur so far, it did nothing for the story. Very rarely does it do anything for the story. Don't have your white character say a slur, especially when they're saying the slur as like a way to judge another white person who didn't use it, but your character thinks they would have used it. Like, what the hell is that? But anyway. Daisy. Days. Oh, Daisy. That's right, you make the vlog worthwhile. Yes, you do. Anyway, the father-in-law and his nurse. Father-in-law is like 85 and he's trying to get custody of a 3-year-old. Yeah, that would go over well. But like, he has money, so who knows. But he and his nurse are literally trying to drown Mike and throwing rocks at him to kill him. Do you think in your heart of hearts that you can get away with that? Like, you might be able to avoid prison, but you're definitely not getting the child. So, I don't know. Rich people get away with shit all the time. I know that, but it's just so over the top that it crosses over into not being believable. He has all this money. He doesn't need to kill Mike. He can just buy the child. He's not going to press charges because he thinks he'll look like a sissy and people make fun of him. Come out. You didn't come out? Huh? What are you doing? In this entry of Mike Noonan is the worst man ever. He's gotten Maddie fired. Like, it was probably gonna happen anyway, but he went to the library where she works, and the librarian saw her and him together, and then she gets fired because her stepfather wants to make sure she looks bad for the custody hearing, and she needs to be unemployed for that, I guess. But he's just thinking in his head about how, oh, I'll just like, he's not serious. He's just, you know, having those kinds of nasty thoughts. He's just like, I'll just make her my mistress, and all she has to do is whatever I want. I don't subscribe to the belief that what an author's character says or does reflects what the author believes. But after reading a certain number of books from an author, if the same thing keeps popping up over and over and over again, I do wonder. And the sexism in Stephen King's books makes me wonder. I don't like what I wonder. I'm on part 16 of 20 on Bag of Bones. I'm trying so hard to finish it. I just want it out of my life. But we're almost to the part where, keep in mind the spoiler warning, we're almost to the part where Maddie dies. And I remember this from when I was, what are you doing in there? The table's shaking. But anyway, I remember this part from when I was 16. Basically, Mike decides, you know what? I will have sex with Maddie. And then she gets shot, I think, immediately. It's almost comical. But I just want to reinforce two things. One, every woman in this book, even the child, exists only to further Mike's story. They have no agency outside of Mike. And two, Mike and Maddie's relationship, entirely, 100%, nothing else, is about him saving her. Their entire bond is him saving her. So this grand romance where this 20-year-old wants to sleep with the 40-year-old is all because he saved her. So yeah. Don't mind the rats or me petting them like a villain from a movie. But so we're getting toward like the big reveal of what happened. A few things to say. One, the cover for the paperback, or no, the hardcover, because the cover for the hardcover shows like a woman with like a racist head. It's not a hat, but like it's, oh god, I don't even know how to describe it, honestly, because I don't know what it's called. But like a racist head ornamentation, I'll say. And the ghost in this is a black woman named Sarah Tidwell. She wears a sun hat. They also made the woman on the cover white. Why? Honestly, why? But anyway, it was a straw hat, not a sun hat. Sorry, it's a straw hat. But also, we're getting to the point where the big reveal is going to happen, and it's so obvious what happened. It's like the most obvious it could be, and I'm just uncomfortable by the fact that it's going to be like, obviously they sexually assault her and kill her child, so she's getting revenge by making them kill their children as a ghost. And I'm just uncomfortable by the fact that they're turning this poor abused black woman to the villain. Like, I hate that kind of thing. Also, like, the assumption that, I guess, oh yeah, Bun and Bright peed all over me. She's old. She can't help it. But anyway, I don't like when they do that kind of thing, because it's just like, okay, you're under the assumption, you're going under the assumption that ghosts are all evil, first of all, and second of all, that this ghost, because something bad happened to her, is automatically going to blame everyone and make them do the same thing that happened to her. And you also happen to make her black. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. It is also racist. Like, all the songs that she sings, she's a musician from, like, the time period is very vague. Well, it's not vague. I guess I'm just not paying attention, but, like, she's a musician. She went around the country with, like, I think her husband and son. The son was a little boy, though, so he wasn't part of it. And all the songs she sings are, at least the ones he mentions her singing, like, a lot of them sound very, very sexual. Which I also don't like. That's a stereotype. Stop with the stereotypes. Alright, so I finished Bag of Bones. Getting 2 stars. The ending, pretty much from my last update to the ending, it's all very predictable, very boring. It's fine. I mean, this is a basic Stephen King book. There's racism, there's... What are you guys doing in there? There's racism, there's slurs, there's sexism, it's everything you can imagine, and like every Stephen King that has a child in it, it's uncomfortable. So I'm giving it 2 stars, and I look forward to seeing what Kathy thinks of it. Sorry, Mercy almost fell. Alright, that was Bag of Bones. I'm so happy to be done with it.
So I was dumb and I started Bag of Bones when Sarah was asleep, so I couldn't go in there to voice my opinions. Hopefully this is going to be one of the only clips I have just talking to the camera instead of her. I just want to make a couple notes about this. I've noticed I haven't read a ton of Stephen King books. Every Stephen King book I've read other than Carrie has been for this. But I do want to make note of being like, okay, so I also knew that he likes to place his books kind of in the same places. He's got lots of books that take place like in Derry, or he mentioned Castle Rock and stuff because he really loves Maine, I guess. I just thought it was such a funny thing that poor Derry, Maine not only has an evil clown spider that eats children, but apparently it also has a child-killing ghost. Does Stephen King kill a lot of children in his books? Like, specifically children? The other note I had... this is another, I think a lot of people have recognized this with Stephen King, but another writer character, sure. Another widow/widower character. Okay. But one positive thing I like is so far of all of the Stephen King books I've read with a married couple, which might only be this and Lissy's story that I can think of. I don't know, but I do like that the married couples are like happily married and they enjoy each other. It's not necessarily what you'd expect. I feel like you'd expect the typical like fighting and the I hate my wife stuff, but both of those couples were very in love with each other, and I do like that. I'm just kind of bored with this so far. I hate the reader. He's terrible. He's reading everything like he's kind of like doing an old-fashioned voice, like just like almost like an old-timey, like that kind of thing, which is weird because I think this book takes place in the 90s. So okay, yeah, I get that's the extent of my thoughts on that so far. I'm going to try and keep the rest for ranting at Sarah later. Anyway, should we discuss? I started Bag of Bones.
She did.
Which is a bag of garbage. Well, okay, it's not, I don't actually think it's that bad. I'm 2 hours in. I assume you said the premise.
Yes. Sorry, it's like 2 or 3 weeks later. She didn't get it at the same time as me. No. So I read it a while ago.
We'll assume you know what the premise is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know. I remember what the book's about. I just don't remember what I said in my clips, other than I was very upset.
One thing that I kind of liked, which he also did in Lissy's story, is that the couples, just like, even though one of them's dead, it's just like a nice loving couple. And I do like that, as opposed to, I guess there wouldn't really be a plot if they hated each other, you know, and they died.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But I like that. I think it's weird that he has done another widower story.
Yeah, this came out first. This was 1998, and Lissy's story was 2006, I believe.
I love the idea that this poor sap could only write 1 book a year and 2 on a really, really good year, and he only harvested or squirreled away 4. And it's like, what are you doing that you can only write 2 books a year? Is it because Stephen King does it?
I don't know how many books Stephen King writes a year.
I don't think these characters had, like, kids or anything. So, like, what do you...
They didn't. That's the whole point of, like, her losing the child.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She was pregnant. But, like... Yeah. But I don't... Like, you don't have kids. You just have a spouse. So, like, do you not have the time to write even, like, 1,000 words a day? Stephen
King has a very specific way he writes, and he gives this to all of his characters, where it, like, consumes them body and mind. And
Is Stephen King okay?
No.
But yeah, I thought that was, I guess there's a lot of authors only write 1 book or 2 a year. But, like, I don't know, the concept of you can't crank out, like, 200,000 word books a year consistently.
Mm-hmm.
No, but, like, it just seems like not a lot when you don't have a ton of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I also liked that this is set in Derry. I think I had a comment that was like, this poor town that has, like...
Is it still in Derry?
Yeah, 2 hours. Only 2 hours in.
Oh.
Does it change?
Yeah.
But, like, I thought it was funny, the idea that there's a ghost.
That's not a spoiler or anything.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's in the, if you had read the synopsis, which, like,
I did not. I don't read synopses before I read it. But I thought it was funny that this town has, like, a ghost and an evil clown spider.
Yeah, he doesn't do much with Derry. It's mostly Castle Rock.
He mentioned Castle... I always get excited about that kind of thing because he mentioned Castle Rock, and while I have not read Castle Rock, I was just like, I know what that is. I understood that reference.
Okay. Castle Rock isn't a book.
It's the show.
Yeah, that's the show. Castle Rock is just a setting for many of his books. And they named the show Castle Rock to kind of encompass all of it.
I wish the show was better. I don't know if anyone out there has seen the show.
Well, the experience of watching that show. We watched, like, did we even get through a full season?
We watched... Did we go back and finish? I think
can't
we did.
remember.
It got better at the end.
I just remember, because I had spent so much time reading Stephen King as a child, having to sit there and explain to her everything that was happening. Because if you do not read Stephen King for 10 plus years, you do not understand that show.
Should that be a project? Like, it's going to take us forever to read all the Stephen Kings, but I wonder if, like, in a year or something, we should watch Castle Rock again.
We can.
It got better.
We never moved on to season 2.
It got better as it went on. I remember that. And then season 2 is Annie Wilkes.
Yeah.
It's played by an actress. She is played by an actress that I actually like. I don't really know what they're going to do with her. I guess Annie Wilkes did weird stuff for, like, her whole adult life.
Yeah.
So there's stuff they could do. I think she's got, like, a daughter, which seemed weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But we'll see.
But, like,
I'm
genuinely,
curious.
me having to sit there and explain to her, because I'm the only one in my family who could figure out what was going on in that story. Yeah, and I could barely figure it out. And I only knew because I have read so much Stephen King.
Her parents tried watching it. Is it based off of books, or is it like, here's Castle Rock, here's new characters? Because Annie Wilkes is in it, but it's season 2.
Yeah, like, I can't remember it off the top of my head, because, like, my brain did not retain that show at all.
I retained Roman from Hemlock Grove.
But yeah, I can't remember if there's any characters from the Castle Rock books in the show, but I think it's more like an homage to Stephen King's works, or at least it was. I don't know now. But yeah, it's weird. But anyway.
It sucks because if that show was executed well, that could be super cool. Because I love that stuff. I love that kind of stuff. I love that he reuses towns, even though, like, trying to figure out the logistics of, like, so Pennywise is in Derry, and that's a weird thing that no one notices, but there's a reason I guess no one notices. But then, like, other weird stuff happens.
Oh, it comes up, like, in Pet Sematary, the old man talks about Cujo. He's just like, yeah, a little bit down
Our dog?
No, not our dog. Like, a little bit down the road, dog went rabid, killed... he named a bunch. He named whoever died. And, like, that kind of stuff happens, and then, like, the main character from the Dark Half is mentioned again later. And a sheriff pops up from, I think, Needful Things and the Dark Half.
I love that. I love that kind of stuff a ton. I'm so easy. For real. If in this book they mention something about, like, friggin' kids going missing, like, obviously that's the premise sort of this, but if they mention it in a way that was clear that it was Pennywise, That would be sick as hell.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. I think that's fun. It sucks because I feel like I could, in another universe, like there's another me who loves Stephen King, but in this universe, I don't, because his ideas are always really cool for the most part. But it's like he doesn't know how to execute them, which is such an awful thing to tell a creator that he can't execute his own ideas, because obviously he's very creative and very clever and even insightful sometimes. But then just like, I don't know, he fumbles.
Yeah.
Who am I to say Stephen King can't write? Obviously, the majority of the world disagrees, and that's fine. I'm okay with a lot of people thinking I'm wrong. That's just my opinion, man.
Well, so far, it's interesting. Your opinion versus mine. I know what happens.
I'm nervous because you said there was like a rape scene that it's so bad that I gotta skip the whole chapter.
Just skip the whole thing.
I'm gonna say something uncharitable. Bag of Bones. Shocking, I know. The voice, the main character, the narrator, if you will, the way in which he speaks, I can only describe as like word salad. You know what I mean? It feels like gibberish. It's not. It definitely isn't. But it feels like it is. And I don't know how to explain that. I'm not a fan of it. I feel confused, even though he's saying perfectly mundane things. Like, so mundane that the book is awful to read. But he's just rambling. It's just like, you wrote this long book, Stephen King, that didn't need to be. Why is that always what happens? Why does he make every book a million times longer than it needs to be? Because I think if he edited himself down to what was necessary, whether it be plot-wise or character development or descriptions that are actually necessary, his work would be like so much better for me. Like, again, I know that Stephen King, people think he's like a god. Fine. Okay. But, God, I just wish he wrote smaller. I would love it, I think, if he did. Like, if Lissy's story was maybe close to half the length. Like, cut out the torture. This one I feel similar to, like, I don't mind what's happening. Like, everything that's happening is fine. I like the character. I don't hate him or anything. He's, like, dealing with the grief of losing his wife and going, like, through his life. It's been 4 years. They skipped time. That's all fine. But just taking forever to, like, get to the point, and that's what I hate. Because, like, if he found a way to make this a little more, like, concise, I guess, maybe is the word I'm looking for. Like, if he had some brevity, I think it would be great. But, like, I just don't need all of this. I don't need all of it. Some of it, not all of it. Please do less of it. A quick thing. He's mentioned, he's a writer, of course, the main character. Oh, he's a writer, the main character. And he said that he had like 4 books squirreled away for a rainy day, I guess, to submit to his publisher. And he says he hasn't written a single word in like 4 years. And like, maybe I'm overthinking it, but they act like once he turns in a draft of a manuscript, like a first draft, there isn't like a rigorous editing process in which he cannot avoid writing. You know what I mean? Like, especially this is like the day and age of computers. I don't know how they used to do it when you had to like hand type everything, how they would edit or change stuff. But like, there's for sure computers. He still physically sends the manuscript as opposed to emailing it, which I don't know. I was a child in the 90s. I don't know how that worked, but I just, they haven't mentioned like the months of editing, or the fact that when you edit a book, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be adding scenes or changing scenes or deleting them and having to like bridge that stuff that you cut. So, okay, it feels like I'm nitpicking as I'm saying it, but am I wrong? Like, how is it possible that he has these 4 manuscripts that he sent in that he hasn't had to write anything for? And maybe when he said he hasn't written 4 years, he didn't mean that, but like, that's still a lot. Like, if you're not Stephen King, Sarah J. Maas levels of a writer, or Lee Bardugo, maybe, like, your editing is gonna be probably extensive. Like, big authors, don't really need, well, the editors don't think they need to be edited because it's like, oh, the fans will read anything, so we don't need to cut this down or like do real content edits, whatever. But Stephen King should know how this works. Maybe at this time he just hadn't had like a real edit in so long that he completely forgot that when you go through edits, because you have several editors, you get asked to add stuff or alter it. But like, would him having to add scenes or chapters not like help his writer's block at all or anything? Like do anything for him? Like, how did he do that if he can't write? Are you telling me that he did 4 entire books and he submitted the first draft and he didn't have to do any editing after that? I don't believe that. These are first drafts. Like I think that like no one had read them even. So like, yeah, he did one draft, a single draft, submitted it, and then didn't have to do any editing. Other people don't do your line editing for you. You have to go approve it legally. They can't make changes to your manuscript without you approving it. Like, for real. So, I don't know. I'm nitpicking because I don't like the book. It is what it is. But I'll leave you with that. I lied. One more comment. Stephen King seems like he is working out some aggression here. Like, I'm going to make a Game Grumps reference part where Aaron's trying to kill Bowser and he just starts screaming that he's a freak. And then Dan goes, you're really, like, really dealing with some stuff, huh? And, like, just because the writer in the book is talking about how much he hates interviews. He's like, oh, I'm going to do this softball interview that I can, like, basically do over the phone while I'm reading a book. He's like, I hate those ones where you're on the TV show and they obviously have never read your book, and then they just ask you stupid questions like, how do you get all those crazy ideas? And it's like, dude, Steven, I know that's just you talking. And it's funny. I did like that part because it feels very, like, letting off steam. So, 1.4 bag of bones. I'm a liar. I just keep coming back. Okay. 2 seconds later, his agent calls because he'd been talking to the guy's editor. So he does have an editor. And they love the book. And they're like, all right, so we're going to try and get you a 3-book deal at your publisher. And they're like, or the agent is like, I'm trying for $3 million per book, $9 million, which they did say was high. But then he's like, I'm pretty sure I could get $7.5 million for 3 books. And it's like, okay, this is the 90s. That's a whole lot of money, obviously. So I don't know what kind of authors are making multiple millions of dollars per book. Because like Victoria Schwab, who is incredibly successful, like one of the most like acclaimed authors currently, she got a trilogy deal for only $1 million nowadays. So I don't know if this writer is supposed to be like the levels of Stephen King in the book, because obviously it's not a normal thing to get offered roughly $2.5 million for a book as your advance. Like, I don't even know if like Leigh Bardugo gets that much money, and she's in young adult and she's like way popular. So he's getting an insane amount of money now for these books. It stands to reason, I feel like I keep saying that phrase, that he probably is getting at least $1 million per book, and has for several years, because he also mentioned that because his publisher wants to do a crash publisher. Okay, like when you crash a book, they say kind of what it is in this. You just really rush it. You rush the writing, you rush the editing, you rush to get on the shelves. It's like what happens when someone super famous dies. Like someone will die and then a month and a half later, there's a new biography about them. That book was crashed. Someone burned them in there. It'll do that. So he got offered extra money to do a crash book. And he said that he thought, like, I think they said something like a 10% bump, and that he thought he could get several $100,000. So he's making a ton of money. I don't want to nitpick, but if you're making that much money, like he's written a ton of books. Let's say he's got $10 million in the bank, which is reasonable. $10 million in 1998. He's freaking out over the fact that he can't write, and it doesn't even seem to be because it's his passion. It seems like a money thing, and he has vaguely mentioned that he could retire, but like, just retire. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't write anymore because you're having too much anxiety or, I guess, what is that? Anxiety? Like, I guess he said, like, he gets sick when he tries to write. So, yeah, anxiety. He has anxiety attacks, panic attacks. He just can't do it. Then just retire, because he's filthy rich. He doesn't need to keep writing. And even if he completely stopped writing books, he would still get royalties. And like, it would probably take him a good couple years to complete. If he's Stephen King, okay. I'm gonna rant. I'm gonna hold this differently because my arm hurts. Okay. He was told by his publisher basically that if he doesn't come out with a book, like every year, he's going to completely fall off of like people's radars, and his career will like never bounce back if he comes out with a book like in 2 years or 3 years. And the reason he's crashing a book is because of some competition. And it's like, if this guy's making millions of dollars as an advance per book, the competition doesn't matter. Like, Stephen King can put out a book every 5 years and it's going to sell amazing. Like, if you're making this much money, you are Stephen King levels of writer. It doesn't matter if you only come out with a book every 5 years. You're fine. So they're trying to insinuate that he is making a wild amount of money in his advances. And he's like, that, like, you, okay, do you know what an advance is? Do people know? Okay, an advance, obviously, when you sign a publishing deal, they say, we're going to give you this much money as an advance. And you get paid that money. And when the book comes out and it starts selling, you don't get more money until you have paid back the advance in your royalties. And your royalties are typically 10-ish, I think, % of the sales. So if you get $1 million advance, to pay back that advance is a lot of books. It's a lot of books. Okay? A lot. If you're that popular, you don't have to come out with a book once a year to stay relevant. Okay, like, look at any popular author right now. Leigh Bardugo doesn't come out with a book every year. Victoria Schwab, well, she's got comic books, so it's a little more complicated. Sarah J. Maas doesn't. Who else? Patricia Briggs, obviously, because I'm suffering waiting for Charles and Anna. Do you mind? I think Rick Riordan would come out with one every year, but hasn't really lately because he's busy doing an imprint, and he has the new standalone that came out. But that one would make more sense because it's kids reading, and kids have like that kind of mentality. If you don't have a book every year, you might forget about it, but like, he's writing for adults. That's not the same thing. I'm looking at my shelves. I don't think Holly Black has a book come out every year. Cassandra Clare, not anymore. So it's just the point that he has to come out with a book every year, but he's so popular that he's getting millions of dollars in advance. It doesn't make any sense. Stephen King would know better, right? He should know better. This clip is 6 minutes long of me saying the same thing over and over again, so I'm going to stop it. But like, think about it, it doesn't make sense. You don't get advances that big if you're the kind of author that would completely become irrelevant if you publish a book every 3 years. He meets this little girl's mom. And in his head, he calls her an inattentive slut and trailer trash. He called her trailer trash first, and it was preceded by him being like, oh, it's okay, I'm Irish. We were trailer trash back when the trailers were carriages or something. But then he called her a slut? Why is she a slut? That seems like weird. Like, all he said about her is like, she looks very young, and I think her kid had like run off or something. But like, why are you calling her a slut? First of all, what are you basing that off of? Second of all, why are you saying it with such fury? I just want to record my babies. They're I was gonna say they're redecorating. What are you doing? You gonna steal my towel? My towel to protect me from your urine? She just put these in here. I'm gonna do something mean because I want to see if I can. I can just pluck those out, can't I? I want to see if I could get her to do it again. Watch this. Oh no, Mama's coming in. What's Mama doing? What is she doing? Why is Mama doing this? Why is Mama doing this? Wookie couldn't care less. Oh no. Why Why is Mama doing this? What? Wookie. Wicket. Go fix it. Go fix it. Here, use my hand as a bridge. She ran in there. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Do your rearranging. No. Do your rearranging. I messed this up with the thought that you would fix it. Now I just feel bad. I don't have any book thoughts other than it's obviously getting misogynistic, and he said the R word, and he was sexualizing the 3-year-old, talking about how he's glad he's too old to be one of her boyfriends or something. He's saying she's a loser, or she's gonna be, and that girls around there only went to college because of boys, and they dropped out also because of boys. So that's fun. That's pretty cool. I missed it. I missed her putting that in there. I also missed my precious baby Wookie climbing this. She had got all the way up to the top, and then she tried to jump, and then she slipped, and she fell down, and I felt terrible because I didn't catch her. And that's my sweet baby angel, and I love her, and I'm bad at keeping her safe. Oh, she keeps slipping. Don't like that. Don't like the slipping. Oh, yes, yes. Organize. Okay, well, she's doing it slowly. Can I rock out of my hand? She wants to try this again, but she's scared. It's okay, baby. You want to try? Yeah, come on.
Go.
Okay, I'm going to make an assumption about Stephen King. Is it uncharitable? Maybe. But what he did, I think, means that I don't have to be nice to him. I think Stephen King likes using the N-word in places he doesn't think he'll get in trouble. And I think Joe Hill also likes using the N-word in places that he thinks he won't get in trouble. Because I believe there must be, if there's any instances in which you absolutely must use it, I'm going to guess it's about 1% out of 100. And good old Steve really likes to say that. And the context in which he said it this time, I will tell you fully. So he's in this place he calls like Sally Laughs, or
Sarah Laughs.
It's so stupid. He always has a stupid name for everything that doesn't need a name. He's talking about this woman, this black woman, and he's like, nowadays we'd call her African American, but back in this specific time they'd call her, and then he went, and then back here they'd call her, and it's like,
I think I did a clip ranting about the same exact thing. There's another instance where you're gonna encounter it and you're gonna get annoyed.
It is just completely 100% unnecessary to tell us what they would have called a black woman in several different eras. It's like, we already know, and if we don't know, we don't necessarily need to be told. I just think that sometimes people like getting away with doing something because it makes them feel powerful. I don't know. I guess I don't want to make a whole bunch of assumptions about Stephen King. But like when you use the N-word as a white person, especially, so
it's been a while since I've read it, but I think every instance that it was used in this book was completely 100% unnecessary.
Like, I understand people's need for making things realistic. Like, oh, we need to put rape in this fantasy because that's realistic. We need to say the N-word to this character we're having shown violently raped and beaten because that's realistic. They'd say the N-word, and it's like, I get that, but they'd also, like, be peeing all the time and, like, sneezing, and you never write a sneeze into a book. Is that not realistic? Yeah. Is that not necessary? You really want to type out the N-word, but you won't have them sneeze?
Yeah, no character in an epic fantasy died of dysentery on their way to battle.
Like, I don't want to necessarily sit here and say that Stephen King just really likes saying racial slurs, but what am I supposed to think when he says them all the time in situations where he just doesn't need to?
Oh, she's trying to
and the same thing with his son Joe Hill in Horns, a book that I really like. There's an instance where he's, like, listening in on someone's thoughts, basically. Or is he listening in, or are they talking? But she's sleeping with a guy who is black, and she calls him the N-word because she's racist, and it's like, but you didn't need to do that. You could have showed that she's racist other ways without saying, like, the worst racial slur. You know what I mean? It's just frustrating. It's like, I'm getting all fired up, obviously. This kind of thing irritates me. It's like, do you not care about your audience who is reading these books who are people of color? Do you think that they want to, like, live their lives always having to hear people say the worst thing they could be called? Like, is that not... Like, this book already I have problems with it because of the antagonist or whatever you want to call her. But it's just like, don't people of color deserve to enjoy things without running into racial slurs?
Yeah, I think so.
I was mad.
I ranted in my clips about it.
Then also, like, I read the synopsis because I had never read it, and I was like, oh, so he's gonna like start falling for the mom of this girl, cool. And then I found out she's like 20, and it creeps me out. 40 and 20 isn't that bad, but he's really gross about it.
Did you get to like the parts with the kid?
Yeah, like it creeped me out what he was like projecting onto the kid, and it creeped me out.
It gets worse.
Ugh, but like, then there's a part where he accidentally brushes the mom's boob with his hand, and he like makes a thing out of it, and it's like, it was an accident, man. You could just like write it off. But he like calls her a slut and stuff, and talks about how she's probably stupid and all that, and it's just like, for what reason? Because she's a young mother? My mom was a young mom. She got pregnant when she was 20. Like, does that make her stupid?
I dislike that as well. It's just like, I think I said like pretty much everything you're saying right now. It's like almost with the same degree of irritation, but like the way he acts around the kid, like Stephen King and kids, it's like, he's always really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and then I remember he was talking about, because people were like, hey man, it's weird that you had like a bunch of kids have sex with one girl in a sewer. That's like a weird thing to do. He's like, you made it weird because it wasn't like that for me. It's like, really? Because you keep doing weird sexual stuff with children. At some point, Steve, I'm gonna think it's you.
If I met him, like, if I met someone like him in real life and I had a child, I would not let them near my child.
He's just weird. It's like, having the kids have sex with each other to get rid of their innocence or whatever, like, really bothered me. Like, this stupid thing with virginity and, like, the gravitas that gets put on it. Mm-hmm. But back then, sure, I understand, not the gangbang part, but I understand the gravitas of virginity and how it was viewed in, like, the 80s, and the 90s even, the 2000s. But do I really have to read a scene? I'm going to skip it. I don't want to... When we get to it, I'm not reading a scene where a bunch of children have sex with another child.
It's really obvious. I'm also going to skip it. It's really obvious when it pops up, and I'll tell you, if I read it before you do, I'll tell you when to click the skip button.
And contrary to what Stephen King says, it doesn't make me the weirdo, that it makes me uncomfortable. That there's a long sex scene with a little girl describing how it feels to have sex with 5 boys. 6?
I don't even know. Like,
it's disgusting. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. He's the weirdo.
Absolutely, yeah. As I said, if I knew him in real life, he would not be allowed around my children if I had them.
It just bothers me, the slurs, constantly. In so many books. I don't know, like, I think that in it's like, one of the kids, Mike, he's black in the book, right?
Yes.
And then his bullies call him the N-word.
Yeah.
So, I don't think they had to do that. I think them bullying him, and mostly him, would make it obvious they were racist. If they even need to be racist, I guess it's the 1950s, so they should be, I guess, sure. But, like, you don't I understand it's realistic. And, you know, I guess when I was watching the movie It, when I heard them say, like, the gay slur, that one sometimes, like, goes, like, I don't even notice it. Sometimes the shortened version, the long version, for some reason, always, like, gets me, but I don't always notice the short one, because I'll just say, in my childhood, not by me, but the people I was around, they would throw that word around, and that was in a jokey manner. Like, a ton of people,
that was a thing in the early 2000s. Right.
I haven't said it, even though I am queer, so technically I think I'm allowed to. But I've never said it, and I wouldn't. But it doesn't register with me that it's bad all the time, because I didn't know it was a bad thing until I was older. But, like, a friggin' racial slur? Must we? No, I guess I don't want to say that, like, queer slurs are not as bad as racial slurs. But for me personally, I really don't want to hear the racial slurs when I'm trying to read a book.
Yeah. For a little context for this clip.
What are you doing?
I came in to say hi to Wicked and Wookie, and she was listening to Bag of Bones. And I said, did you notice Stephen King's the one reading it? And she said, go get your effing phone. So here we are.
Okay, you listen to me, bucko. The second I first started playing this, I'm like, why the hell is this reader reading it like someone in the 1940s? It's awful. It's making the story worse. If they got anyone else to read it, I might like it better. He sounds way too old. He's only 40, and, like, Stephen King, I don't know how old he was at this time, but he sounds too old.
He's in his 70s now, so he was, like, in his, like, late 50s.
Literally, one of the first thoughts I had when listening to this was, this reader is terrible. It doesn't say on here that it's read. Yeah, it does. Anyway, but like, he sounds like he's from the 1940s, right? Like the way he's reading it.
Yeah, he's not a great reader in my opinion.
It's so bad, and I was just wondering, like, oh my god, why would they pick this person? Because they read it so bad. It's going to take me a while to process this. Does he read a lot of his own audiobooks?
No, which is why I mentioned at the beginning of this, when I opened it up and it said read by author, I was like, what?
Did you recognize his voice at all?
Well, I didn't get to his voice before it said read by author. So, I probably would have, but I found it telling. I find it telling which ones he decides to read for. It's just like...
Which ones he's invested in?
It's just like, why are you so, like, interested in... What's his fucking name? Mike... Oh my god. It's the Staying Power of this book.
Flanagan?
No, Mike... It begins with an N, I think?
Newman.
Is it Newman?
His wife called him by his last name, which is weird because it was also her last name. Something like that.
Whatever. But, like, I found it telling that he was very deeply invested in this character, who I hate.
Noonan.
But,
like, okay. Some authors should read their own book. Like, Neil Gaiman is the only fiction author I think I've listened to, other than, like, Elizabeth Acevedo reads her own books.
Shauna McGuire read one of hers.
Shauna was really good. Elizabeth Acevedo was good. Aaron Hansen was so good in his. I can't think of a lot of others I know of. But if you can't act, you shouldn't read. And Stephen King can't act. But like the whole entire time of listening to this, I'm like, it's the 90s. Why does he sound like he's in the 40s? Like I might have put that in a clip. That he sounds so weird. And it's like, he's supposed to be a 40-year-old man, but like, it made me feel like he was old, and he's like hitting on this 20-year-old who they're dating now. And it's just like, if a 40-year-old is with a 20-year-old, I don't necessarily think that's like too weird.
With these characters, it does come off weird because he
thinks nothing of her.
First of all, and second of all, he's like really obsessive of her age. Like, he brings it up a lot.
Cool. Like, I feel like there's obviously some situations where, like, a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old is not healthy, but I feel like there's plenty that there are.
Also, like, the weird hero worship thing, like, it's... I think I mentioned it in one of my clips where it's just, like, the rich white guy comes and saves her, and now she's infatuated with him.
Myopic lens of your own self-actualization.
So, like, I didn't like that, because she doesn't have enough personality that there's not enough to her that it doesn't feel like he threw a bunch of money at her and now she's willing to sleep with him to make it up to him.
This thing with Stephen King's characters is like, he writes pretty two-dimensional characters, so the idea of even giving them any emotional stuff seems like not...
I read that, or I watched that, her actual YouTube channel's Melina Pendulum, her video on Stephen King's black characters.
Princess Weeks?
Yeah, Princess Weeks.
Okay.
Her YouTube name and her Twitter name are different. I always call her Princess Weeks because I found her on Twitter first.
Yeah, same.
But he has a quote where someone's just like, your female characters aren't really that great, and he's just like, yeah, that's absolutely fair, and I know that.
Your male characters aren't that great either.
And then that's when he said, I would go as far as to say my black characters are also not that great, and it's like.
So you're aware and you're not doing anything about it.
His white guilt prevents him from like giving them depth, he says. And then
What?
That's what he says.
Your white guilt keeps you from making strong black characters? What does that mean?
He won't give them any bad traits.
What bad traits does he think are so bad that it would be problematic?
I don't know.
Does he know that black people are also humans?
I don't really know. And then, like, the stuff with his female characters, he kind of brushed aside in his quote, which is what he does when he doesn't want to, like, focus on one of his bad attributes. Kind of like the kid thing.
The thing is, I'm so torn on Stephen King because I feel like he's got cool ideas. Like, I think the plot of every book of his I've read, I've been super into. And there's a whole bunch more that I'm super into, but the book's going to be too long. The character's going to be weirdly problematic. Like, yes. I can get past some problematic, but his make me uncomfortable. And the characters or the racism stuff is where it's like you have white guilt, but you're like totally cool using the N-word. your white guilt doesn't keep you from using slurs.
I will say that Princess Weeks, I don't actually know I haven't been, like, following her long enough to actually know what her name is. I think it's Melina. But she doesn't say it very often.
I only saw Princess Weeks.
Yeah.
Because I saw her on Twitter, too.
But yeah, she says that... She said that she's not calling him racist. She doesn't necessarily think he's racist. And, like, obviously she would know better than either of us.
Maybe it's that thing, I don't know, I'm sure there's a word for it, where it's just, like, you grow up a certain way. Like, as a white person, your perspective is going to be weird and not necessarily correct. Like, no matter what, you're going to have, like, a racial bias because of how you were raised.
Yeah. I mean, and he was born in the 40s.
Yeah, I mean, like...
The fact that he tries, honestly...
The stuff he stands for now seems good. Like...
Yeah, he still fucks up occasionally, but...
He is an old man. I guess I do want to give him some credit. It just really puts me off that he uses so many slurs all the time.
Yeah.
Just like, you don't have to do that, man. You can absolutely, totally not use racial slurs. Please stop making me listen to people. Oh, wait, if he's reading it, that means he said the N-word.
Yeah.
Steven, no.
Yeah. Alright, well, I guess we'll end this clip.
You guys okay?
Well, guys, you made it to the end of the Bag of Bones video.
We made it to the end.
So, what did you think of the end? What are your thoughts? What are your mini thoughts?
I loved the whole thing. I didn't think it was racist or problematic at all. I think it was exactly... I wish it was longer,
Did you
frankly.
skip the rape scene?
Yeah, I did.
Yep. I also, like, with, what is her name? Maddie? That is the longest time I have seen in a book where the woman in the fridge trope was played out. Like, the whole time, you know, she does not exist for anything but his story.
She didn't really have a personality other than being obsessed with him for throwing money at her.
Yeah, she really liked his money.
I hate it because, like, I told Sarah, I didn't put this on a clip, but I think I would have liked this story better if instead of trying to have, like, a romance with her, she was maybe, like, a couple years younger, and it was more of a father-daughter thing because, like, he wanted a kid so bad, and he didn't get that. And then, because I didn't know at first she was going to die, but then it just felt gross because it's, like, so his wife who couldn't give him a kid died, and he found this 20-year-old who could do that, and then she dies, and it's just, like...
And then he just takes her child.
Yeah, and I just don't... I wish that he just had, like, a fatherly relationship with Maddie instead of trying to get in her pants because she was so young and he made such a thing of it. And I don't know. I just don't know why he needed to have, like, a romance in it, especially if it didn't go anywhere and her death just served to further his story.
Yeah.
I had a lot of problems with this book.
I did too, as y'all saw. I had so many clips. I don't normally have that many clips for a book. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff about it that I didn't like. I remember at some point in my clips, because she read it at the end of November. I finished it November 1st, so I read it at the end of October, so it's been about a month. But, I remember at some point I stopped to say, I just remember what this book's about, and I think it's about to get hella racist.
It just really bothered me, because it feels like he just kept looking for excuses to use the N-word, honestly.
So yeah, there's that, and then there's Stephen King admits... Well, okay, he did that. We talked about it, him saying that, like, someone pointing out that his female characters aren't very strong, and then he redirected to how his black characters aren't very strong, which to me feels like a dismissal of the fact that his female characters aren't very strong. And instead of dismissing it, how about you improve both your black characters and your female characters?
To be honest with you, I don't feel like any of his characters are ever strong.
No, because
like, at all. Not that I think that he should, like, be able to get away with making such two-dimensional girls and people of color, but none of his characters feel like they have depth.
Mike had the most character, and I hated him.
I've said this before, I'm sure I'll say it again. I think I could really love Stephen King books if he just would edit himself down to a reasonable length. Like, if this book was way shorter and cut, and, like, the stuff that got cut was the weird stuff, like, some of the racist stuff, because obviously if you want to keep this antagonist or whatever, you have to keep some of it. But if you cut out a lot of the weird dating
to clarify,
stuff...
she doesn't mean cut out the racist stuff. She's saying that there's ways to show someone's racist without using slurs.
Yeah, I also really just don't like that the antagonist is a woman who is brutalized in her last seconds of life, and most likely her entire life.
I said that too in one of my clips. Is like, I really hated that he made the ghost a black woman getting revenge.
She should get revenge.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry, I'm on her side. I don't think she should be killing kids, but, like...
She should be killing adults. No, kill people who are, like, racist now. And who would have done to her, or who would have done now what was done to her. Kill those people.
It just didn't make sense to me that she would kill kids, because kids aren't what hurt her.
Stephen King villainized a woman who was brutalized. That's the only word I can think of it for.
Yeah. As someone who listened to most of that scene, yes.
I skipped it too late, so I heard the beginning of it because I was a little confused on what was happening.
Yeah.
So I skipped a half hour because I thought that was where the rape scene was going to start. And then it came up later and I was like, oops, and I skipped another 10 minutes. And it's like, but it didn't even affect the story for me very much because there's just so much unnecessary stuff.
You could have skipped that scene and just said what happened, by the way, and it wouldn't have changed the story at all.
I just wish that he would shorten up his books, and if he edited himself and he decided what was really necessary, he could cut a lot of this problematic stuff and then have a really tight, good story. And then if your stories are short and your character's a little two-dimensional and you look at the fire.
Yeah, it blew up a little bit.
If you're like a little two-dimensional, but like you mostly rely on your plot, then that's fine. If your plot carries, but if it doesn't, and it's just like, so you have this 15-hour, 20-hour audiobook with these two-dimensional characters doing two-dimensional things, and the plot is, let's make a black woman the bad guy because she's angry that she got raped while her son was being drowned. Like, she should be killing lots of people. Sorry.
Yeah, and like, he like points it out a little bit at the end where someone asks him, like, do you side with her or something like that? And like,
I side with her.
I don't know. That felt strange. Like, him pointing out the issue. You could have just made the antagonist something else. You have the full power as the author to make the antagonist anything you want.
Or, I mean, like, you know what he could have done, I guess, is like, if you want, like, maybe the Sarah to be a red herring, you could have had, like, before she died, she killed one of the people attacking her, and, like, he's the bad guy, and it's trying to make it look like her. Because you got all these, wasn't Joe a ghost, and Maddie was a ghost, and they were trying to help? Yeah. Like, why not give some agency to this woman?
Which makes it worse, is, like, the two white ghosts are the good ones. They have no revenge.
But, like, why not give agency to the woman you base this whole story off of and let, like, she's not really the antagonist, and she comes in and she tries to help, and, like, one of the people that hurt her, she managed to, like, get a wound in that killed them later or killed them during that scene because they had multiple people hurting her. So, like, I don't know. But he did what he did because that's always what Stephen King does.
Yeah. Also, okay, this is the second time I read this book. I didn't like it much the first time. I liked it less the second time. And it has very little substance. Or is this the third time I've read it? Because technically my parents listened to it while we were driving to my grandmother's house. And I was in the car, obviously, and I heard most of it. At the very least. I don't know. It's like the second or third time I've read it. And I like it less and less every time. I don't know. With this one, it feels like the ghosts were flavoring a drama that wasn't very fun to read. Like, how long did that stupid scene where they're trying to drown him go on?
I don't know, but like the stupid party went on for a long time. I want to try the next Stephen King I want to try a shorter one to see if I like it better, because I think that if he just needs to cut himself down. Like, why are these books so long? If he did a shorter book, like a 300-page book, I wonder if
the Girl Who Left Tom Gordon. That one's pretty short.
Maybe we could try that, because like I genuinely think that if he was forced to cut this book by 100 pages, I could have loved a lot of this book. Not the part where you made the bad guy a woman who got raped while her kid got drowned, but other than that, it could have been interesting. Like this guy who's all by himself and he just finds this young girl and he's trying to help her. Like if he wasn't trying to sleep with her also, and if she didn't get friggin' shot in the head.
Honestly, I don't think his worldview is big enough for him to categorize women as things that are other than family or potential sex partner for your male characters anyway. So, whatever.
I need a shorter Stephen King to see but Carrie was short and I didn't love that.
Carrie is pretty bland. The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon's one I really liked when I was younger, so hopefully that one is better. It's about a girl who gets lost in the woods.
All right, well.
So
maybe we'll try that then, and I'll pick out a comic for you to read.
yeah. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. We sure didn't.
Yeah, we absolutely didn't.
I don't know if the next comedy tragedy book club will be Stephen King, because you wanted to do Crescent City.
Yes, I did.
And we also have a Jennifer L. Armentrout to read.
From Blood and Ash.
Yeah. So I don't know what the next one will be, but we'll see you then.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.